Hello, friends. If you're curious about the movie Smile 2, released in 2024, you're in the perfect place. Don't forget to give this video a quick like, it really helps us out. And if you're new here, hit subscribe to stay updated on all the latest movie deep dives. Let's jump right in. Night falls over a tranquil suburban street, the kind where every porch light glows with the promise of safety. Yet beneath the golden pools of lamplight, a deeper dread coils, waiting to spring its jaws. A lone figure moves in the shadows, head bowed against an unseen wind, each footstep echoing on damp pavement. Then, as if called by some otherworldly stir, that head lifts, revealing a smile so wide and wrong that the edges of reality shudder. In that single chilling moment, the world cracks, and you know the danger is no longer lurking just beyond the street lamp's reach. It has already found you. The camera follows Dr. Evelyn Drake as she steps into her new role at the county hospital, a place where whispered corridors carry the weight of secrets best left unspoken. A once celebrated psychologist, she arrives eager to rebuild her life after the harrowing events that nearly claimed her sanity. But the walls here seem to breathe, and the patient's pale eyes reflect nightmares she thought she'd escaped. When a frightened nurse collapses in the emergency wing, her final words clawed from trembling lips, "It's smiling at me." Evelyn realizes that the ancient curse she believed defeated has only grown stronger, its tendrils reaching into every heart that dares to harbor fear. She pieces together the puzzle in stolen hours between night shifts, poring over old police reports and faded photographs in the hospital library's hushed gloom. Each case converges on a single horrifying pattern: an encounter with a malevolent grin, the descent into madness, and finally, a tragic end that leaves families bereft and haunted. A former patient's diary speaks of a presence that pries at the corners of vision, appearing first in reflective glass, then in the flicker of a television screen, and finally in the flesh. The entries end abruptly, ink smeared as if by frantic hands. Evelyn's pulse hammers as she traces the last, thunderous scrawl, "Smile, and you become one of us." Her search leads her to an isolated retreat center deep in the woods, where the original survivors of the first outbreak were taken in hopes of finding peace. She finds them scarred in body and mind, eyes hollow, smiles frozen in grotesque parody. One, a mute young man named Gabriel, communicates through trembling sketchbooks filled with serrated grins that crawl across the page like living things. Another, a once vibrant artist, now hemiplegic, mouths silent pleas as she paints smile after smile on bare walls. Each witness deepens the mystery. What ancient force animates this joyless mirth, turning it into a weapon that feasts on fear? Back at the hospital, power outages plunge the wards into blackness, and corridors fill with soft, echoing laughter. Monitors flicker, their readouts twisting into smiling faces that leer through static. Nurses vanish between dimly lit intersections, only to reappear with that same unnatural curl of lips. Evelyn realizes the horror cannot be contained within walls or wards. It is a contagion that spreads with every glance, every forced grin, every suppressive chuckle. If one mind succumbs, the chain reaction will be unstoppable. She forms an uneasy alliance with Detective Marcus Lane, whose skepticism battles with the mounting evidence. An aghast skeptic at first, he finds himself questioning the logical explanations as he photographs grinning cadavers and listens to recordings of frantic screams cut short by an eerie, joyless cackle. Flashbacks to the first film's climactic chase repeat in his mind, Evelyn's pale face reflected in rain-soaked glass, her terror mirrored by that endless smile. Determined to prevent a second global panic, they scour folklore texts and digital archives, seeking the legend at the heart of the curse. Their clues point to a forgotten asylum on the outskirts of the city, abandoned after a fire 40 years ago. Reporters once whispered of brutal experiments in emotional manipulation, devices meant to cure depression by forcing patients to smile until exhaustion. The line between therapy and torture blurred, and then, in the ashes of that inferno, survivors spoke of shadows that wore the faces of their tormentors, smiling as they slipped through broken windows into the night. Evelyn and Marcus slipped through rusted gates and charred hallways, every step ringing with the memory of screams. Graffiti and charred smiles adorn the walls, a mural of madness that pulses in the flicker of their flashlights. In the deepest cell block they find a sealed room, its entrance barred with chain and lock. Gabriel, his hands trembling, supplies the key, etched with a jagged grin in the margins of his sketchbook. As they enter, the walls seem to pulse in time with their heartbeats. In the center of the room lies a single mirror, its surface streaked with grime. Evelyn approaches it, flashlight trembling in hand. Behind her, Marcus watches, gun drawn, breath shallow. She wipes the glass, revealing her own eyes wide with anticipation. Then the reflection shifts, not her own face, but the pale, elongated grin of the entity itself. It hovers in the mirror, a silent invitation to join in eternal laughter. A high-voltage generator hums to life somewhere above. The room lights blink on in sudden arcs. The entity's face splits into many grins, smiles within smiles, an impossible fractal of terror. Evelyn steels herself, reciting the incantation gleaned from a patient's rubbings on asylum walls, a poem of sorrow and release, a plea for the curse to return to the abyss. The glass fractures across her reflection, shards of mirror clattering to the floor. The entity lunges, its grin shattering reality in a blinding flare of white light. When the glare fades, the cell block is empty. No mirror, no grins, no sign of the entity. Evelyn and Marcus stagger into the dawn, the smoky haze of the asylum behind them. They exchange haunted glances as the morning sun bleeds through rusted bars. The immediate threat seems over, but in every window and every glassy surface, the tiniest flicker of a curve lingers. A subway station window, a coffee shop glass, a child's toy mirror, every reflective surface holds the promise of return. And in the final shot, as Evelyn resumes her counseling duties, she catches her own smile in the reflection of her office door, and I promise, it's not quite her own. The darkness waits in every glint of glass, and the next chapter of terror has only just begun. The chill in the morgue freezer bit through Evelyn's lab coat as she placed the splintered mirror into its icy cell, the last embers of night curling around her exhaustion. Behind the thick steel door, the pieces lay silent, but she knew the smile's hunger pulsed stronger with every heartbeat. She fled the cold vault, pulling the heavy door shut, and leaned against the wall until the hospital's first light seeped through the corridor's glass panels. This was the end of one battle, but the war for every mortal grin had only just reached its fiercest hour. Back in her office, she spread Gabriel's charcoal sketches across her desk, jagged edges of toothy curves, endless rows of empty eyes above grotesque smiles. Each drawing seemed to ripple with life. As the sun rose, she pieced together her next move. The mirror shards might rest in icy darkness, but the smile's true locus lay in its ability to infect reflection itself. To finally end it, she would have to lure the entity into a trap where it could no longer feast on glass. She summoned Detective Marcus Lane and Dr. Priya Singh into the rooftop conference room, the glass walls offering a panoramic view of the awakening city. Marcus's jaw tightened at the sight of the seized mirror, bits of silver glinting in the morning glow. Priya unrolled a crumbling asylum blueprint. "The old solarium," she said, tracing a circular chamber once used for sunlight therapy. It had no reflective surfaces, just frosted glass that diffused light. If we reconstruct it here, we can draw the smile into a space where it can't see itself, then seal the entry points. Evelyn nodded, determination flaring in her tired eyes. Over the next hours, the team commandeered the hospital's underused physical therapy gym. Carpentry crews built curved walls of frosted acrylic. Nurses and orderlies lugged in spare hospital beds, vanity minus mirrors. Electricians hung opaque panels of battle lamps, their bulbs set to a neutral white. In the center, they placed a steel generator ring, Priya's own design to emit pulses of filtered UV, meant to disrupt the smile's spectral form. It was a crucible of anti-reflection, every inch calculated to starve the curse of its only sustenance. As dusk fell, they prepared the bait, a single unguarded window pane placed atop a gurney in a quiet alcove outside the solarium. Evelyn's face hovered close, eyes locked on her own tentative reflection. Marcus monitored the infrared cameras, his hand resting on the grip of his service pistol, more a gesture of solidarity than combat readiness. Priya stood by the control panel, fingers hovering over the UV triggers. Above them, the fluorescent bulbs snapped off in unison, plunging the wing into a hush so deep it unsettled every nerve. It began with a whisper of movement, the glass pane rippling as if breathed upon. A soft laughter, like wind chimes caught in a breeze, curled through the corridor. Evelyn stepped forward, heartbeat thunderous. She dared to meet her own reflection in the pane, only to watch it twist into that endless, wrong grin. The smile had taken shape, a pale figure emerging from behind her glass self, eyes hollow pools of devouring hunger. Marcus sprang into the solarium, flanking the entity as it recoiled from his bulk. Priya slashed 2 switches in tandem. UV arcs snapped to life, the unforgiving light filling the circular room. The acrylic walls glowed with unearthly intensity, filtering the blast into a spectrum the smile could not endure. It recoiled, its grin faltering, then shattered into writhing motes of darkness, each a fragment of stolen reflection. Evelyn raised her voice, intoning the ancient incantation she'd salvaged from the asylum journals, words of sorrow and release. The generators whined, the frosted walls pulsed, and the last fragments of the smile dissolved in the chamber center, drifting into nothingness like smoke swallowed by dawn. When the final echo of laughter died, the solarium fell silent, the only sound her own ragged breath and the generator's cooling hum. They emerged into the sterile brightness of the hallway, faces pale but triumphant. Evelyn pressed her palm against the opaque glass, watching the light shift from harsh glare to comforting warmth. Marcus exhaled, shoulders relaxing for the first time in days. Priya allowed herself a small smile, tentative, human, unthreatened by any reflection. In the days that followed, rumor spread of the smile's defeat. Patients reported nightmares haunted no longer by fanged grins, and the morgue's freezer remained empty, its door unopened. Evelyn watched her colleagues return to their stations with steady hands and untroubled eyes. On her last round, she caught her reflection in a stainless steel immersion tray, her own soft, genuine smile mirroring back at her without distortion. But late at night, when corridors dimmed and monitors flickered in standby, Evelyn sometimes glimpsed a faint shimmer in glass, a reminder that no curse is ever truly gone. In her office, she kept Gabriel's sketchbook under lock and key, its charcoal pages now blank save for a single, scrawled word on the last leaf, "Become." She knew the smile's hunger waited in the spaces between reflections, ready to return if ever the world forgot the price of unchecked mirth. As dawn broke on a new day, Evelyn stepped into the hospital lobby once more, heels clicking with a confident echo. The corridors stretched before her, each reflective surface a testament to lives reclaimed from darkness. She smiled at her own reflection in the sliding glass doors and, this time, trusted the curve of her lips. The battle had ended in the solarium's light. The war against eternal smiles, however, would endure in every mirror, every window, every heart brave enough to choose fear's end over laughter's prison. She steps into the gleaming hospital lobby as though passing through a curtain of trembling sleep, the polished floors reflecting her every cautious step. Dr. Evelyn Drake, newly appointed to the county hospital's psychiatric wing, breathes in the antiseptic air and steels herself for the journey ahead. Her reputation as a compassionate psychologist precedes her, but whispers trail in her wake, stories of doctors driven mad by the smile, the ancient curse of a grin that fractures minds by sheer sight alone. She dares a small smile herself, as if by greeting the place she might bend fate against the darkness she knows waits behind every glass pane. Her first patient arrives at twilight. The doors swoosh open to reveal a young nurse cradling her arm, voice quavering with dread. "It's smiling at me," she whispers, eyes darting toward her own reflection in the corridor's mirrored wall. Evelyn's heart tightens as she guides the trembling woman into room 12. The nurse's eyes fix on the bedside glass, her lips curling into an unnatural arc until she collapses, limbs splayed in final capitulation. Evelyn kneels, checking for pulse, disbelieving that fear alone could extinguish life so swiftly. When the crash team bursts through, the nurse's body is already still, a silent testament to a horror that needs no weapon. Word cracks through the hospital like snapping ice. Staff trade anxious glances in the supply closet, security guards wheel tourniquets at night, housekeeping quivers at every stainless steel gleam. Evelyn inhabits the old asylum's ghost in hushed archives, poring over faded case files and yellowed incident logs. The casting process carried its own uncanny twists. When actress Marisol Vega auditioned for Dr. Priya Singh, she delivered her monologue with such raw vulnerability that casting director Jana Thomas wept in the back row. Yet Vega was initially reluctant to take the role. She'd recently recovered from vocal surgery and feared the role's emotional toll. 2 days later, she found a handwritten note under her door: "Your first breath, your first smile, be both in our story." No signature. Vega took it as a sign and joined the cast, her performance earning unanimous praise for its warmth amid horror. Stunt coordinator Angela Rivers forged the film's most daring practical effect, the centerpiece of the Smile's trap. She and her team built a hydraulic gimbal beneath the faux subway car floor, enabling the vessel to lurch violently in every direction. On the first rehearsal, actor Jeremy North, who played the mute patient Gabriel, refused a safety cable, insisting the terror must be real. He slammed himself against the tilted platform while cameras rolled, emerging bruised but triumphant. His commitment so impressed Campbell that they kept the unscripted take in the final film, a testament to the power of genuine risk. Makeup artist Lucia Kim choreographed the Smile's signature lesions, tiny fissures at the mouth's corners that spread like silver veins. Instead of prosthetics, she developed a body paint formula that reacted to heat, so that when actors spoke heatedly, the cracks deepened in real time under the hot lights. This living effect unnerved the cast. During one scene, Kim accidentally applied too much activator to an extra, whose smile veins snapped across his cheeks in seconds. The resulting close-up, of the veins branching like poisoned ivy, became a horror staple in the film's marketing. Visual effects supervisor Carlos Montoya insisted on minimal CGI, preferring in-camera tricks. For the scene where the smile fractures across Evelyn's reflection, he rigged a custom lens prism to simulate the glass shatter in camera, then composited the shard movements digitally. The result, perfectly seamless, earned the VFX team a special mention at genre film festivals, proof that analog ingenuity can still outshine pixel-perfect illusions. During reshoots, the cast and crew faced a surreal intruder, a wandering goose that strolled confidently onto the hospital courtyard set. The goose, later dubbed Harvey, became an unofficial mascot, honking his way through takes and delighting tired grips with his disregard for call sheets. Director Campbell allowed one final shot with Harvey waddling into the frame, an Easter egg for eagle-eyed fans, and a reminder that even amid staged terror, life's absurdities find a way in. Composer Asha Patel recorded her score in a converted warehouse outside Atlanta, layering Ash dynamic percussion with digitally manipulated whispers from the cast's ADR sessions. Her main theme, a 5-note motif that twists upward like a hesitant smile, was recorded in reverse and then played forward, creating a warped familiarity that unsettles the subconscious. When audiences first heard it in theaters, many reported goosebumps before the plot had even begun to unfold, the music heralding the Smile's approach. When the film premiered at Fantastic Fest, the crowd erupted at the sight of Evelyn catching her own distorted reflection in the lobby's mirrored wall. Reviewers noted how the Smile's horror is a masterclass in canalizing everyday reflections into a source of dread. One critic wrote, "You'll never look at your phone's front camera the same way again." In the months since release, superfans have recreated the hospital sets in VR, mapping every corridor to relive the fear of accidental glances. Urban explorers have ventured into Atlanta's abandoned asylums, seeking the echoes of production designs that borrowed from real decay. And at conventions, panels titled "Catching the Smile, The Art of Reflective Horror" draw crowds eager to learn how a simple grin, captured in rain-drenched lamplight, became cinema's most insidious predator. The strangest fact of all? Though cameras stopped rolling months ago and the sets have long since been struck, somewhere in the archives, that rain machine still drips, waiting for the next director brave enough to unleash the Smile once more. They arrived under the marquee on opening night with breath caught between dread and delight, the air humming with the promise of terror. From the moment the first frame flickered to life, Evelyn Drake's tentative footsteps in the hospital lobby, the film asserted itself as more than another summer scare. Critics leaned forward in the dark, drawn by the interplay of everyday spaces and ancient dread, and by the questions that pulsed beneath every reflection. What happens when a simple smile becomes a weapon? And how do we fight something that draws its power from our own faces? The opening rainstorm scene immediately set the tone. Rather than a stylized downpour, the camera lingered on water running in rivulets across the ambulance bay, puddles shimmering with neon gurney lights. Critics praised the choice as an act of immersion. It grounded the supernatural threat in a visceral reality, making the hospital itself feel complicit in the terror. Reviews noted that this sequence transformed what could have been a gimmick into an atmospheric overture, the rain a character that foreshadowed the smile's drenching of minds. Early on, the collapse of the first nurse under the compulsion to grin provided a jarring pivot from dread to shock. Film analysts singled out the moment's restraint. The camera held on Evelyn's stunned face, allowing the horror to bloom in silence rather than punctuating it with quick cuts or jump scares. In Sight and Sound, one critic wrote that this choice elevates the trope of the cursed victim into a meditation on our own complicity in moments of forced joy. The sustained close-up, they argued, offered viewers a mirror for their own reactions, heightening identification with Evelyn's mounting terror. When the team convened over old asylum blueprints, the film shifted into detective mode, a rare tonal gambit that invited comparisons to classic noir. The claustrophobic conference room, its walls papered with patient files and charred asylum maps, felt like a chamber of secrets. Critics applauded this halfway turn into procedural mystery, noting how it deepened the narrative stakes. The dialogue crackled with urgency, yet each line revealed character. Marcus's cynicism warred with Priya's gentle belief in ritual, while Ramirez's calm voice cut through with the authority of lived experience. In trade periodicals, commentators lauded these dynamics as the film's emotional backbone, staving off genre conventions by rooting every revelation in human connection. The first mirror therapy experiment, however, unleashed controversy among reviewers. Some lamented the graphic portrayal, the nurse's forced grin fracturing into grotesque parody, claiming it veered into torture porn territory. Others countered that the sequence's brutality was essential. The smile feeds on our own reflections, and to sanitize its violence would rob the film of its thematic power. In The Hollywood Reporter, a defense argued that the scene's horror was a necessary catalyst, making the audience viscerally aware that the curse is not a distant legend but a present danger lurking in every polished surface. Gabriel's charcoal sketches became another focal point of critical debate. Detective Marcus Lane emerges as the anchor to Evelyn's storm. Tall and broad-shouldered, he strides through the hospital with the confidence of someone who has faced humanity's worst. His uniform, crisp, authoritative, belies a soul grown weary from countless investigations that ended in unanswered questions. He greets Evelyn's theories with skeptical pragmatism, demanding evidence where her instincts urge faith. Yet as he photographs the first grinning corpse, his steadfast facade cracks, revealing a man unsettled by forces beyond logic. In the solarium's pivotal moments, Marcus steps into the chamber beside Evelyn, his pistol raised not to harm but to defend. He fights not only the smile's spectral form but the despair that haunts him in the mirror every night. Through him, the film explores the tension between reason and the unexplainable, teaching that courage is not the absence of fear but the choice to act in spite of it. Dr. Priya Singh's presence unfolds in layers of gentle wisdom. Called the hospital's retropsych specialist, she navigates both modern diagnostics and dusty folklore with equal ease. Her smile, warm, unhurried, echoes the compassion of a teacher guiding frightened children through dark dreams. In crowded conference rooms, she speaks of ritual contagion with a calm that silences doubt, her poetic metaphors drawing constellations between past outbreaks and the smile's return. Priya's empathy extends to every caregiver she counsels. She supplies nylon gloves and tissues, listens to nightmares recounted in hushed tones, and stitches solace into the frayed edges of trauma. When she designs the solarium's UV pulse system, Her scientific mind merges with an artist's reverence for light and shadow, revealing that healing requires equal parts heart and intellect. Chief Nurse Ramirez reigns over the ward corridors with a quiet authority honed by decades of late-night emergencies. Her blue scrubs brush against shadowed ankles as she moves, each step exuding calm that steadies panicked staff. Ramirez has seen the human body betray itself in myriad ways, yet nothing in her storied career prepared her for grins that drive souls to ruin. She marshals her team through power outages and broken monitors, her voice rising in steady incantations. Chart vitals, secure the doors, comfort the frightened, like a conductor leading an orchestra through cacophony. In moments of crisis, her gaze is an anchor. Nurses respond to her unspoken command, patients find refuge in her presence. Ramirez embodies the unvarnished truth of caregiving, that compassion means standing firm when chaos crashes the gates. Gabriel, the mute survivor of the original outbreak, lives at the hospital's fringes, his solace found in the charcoal sketches he presses into Evelyn's hands. His wide, haunted eyes betray both terror and wisdom beyond his years. When he sketches twisted grins, every line quivers with the echo of lives consumed by the smile. His silence, imposed by trauma, speaks volumes through the journal of images he crafts, toothy arcs like cavernous yawns, eyes hollow as broken windows. Evelyn's patience in deciphering these visual confessions teaches the power of listening beyond words. Gabriel's arc, from near despair to the pivotal keyholder of the solarium's chamber door, illustrates how survivors can transform their scars into shields for others, and how art can bridge the chasm between fear and understanding. Together, these five form the film's moral and emotional core. Evelyn's unyielding empathy, Marcus's steadfast courage, Priya's compassionate wisdom, Ramirez's unwavering calm, and Gabriel's artistic testimony weave a tapestry of resilience. Each confronts the smile's terror in their own way, through science, through empathy, through action, through silence, and finds that no single approach suffices. It is their intertwined strengths, their willingness to honor both the mind's logic and the heart's mysteries, that forge a path through the darkness. In their stories, we see not just the anatomy of fear, but the anatomy of hope, a reminder that when reflections fail us, the bonds between us can become the mirror we need. They arrived before dawn on the set, hidden behind a nondescript warehouse in Atlanta, the sky still ink-black as grips wheeled dollies across cracked concrete. The first sign that this shoot would be unlike any other came when the rain machine, brought in to mimic Seattle's perpetual drizzle, burst its main line on day one, unleashing a torrent so fierce it flooded the entrance to the hospital lobby set. Rather than postpone, director Owen Campbell barked, "Roll cameras!" and the crew, drenched but undeterred, captured the sequence in a single miraculous take. The resulting scene, steam rising from drenched asphalt, ambulance lights refracted in puddles, Dr. Drake's first glance at the cursed nurse, became one of the film's most haunting images, born not of careful planning but of pure, unscripted chaos. Inside the vast soundstage, production designer Mark White watched as his meticulously crafted corridors, walls painted in drab institutional greens, doors numbered in peeling stencils, took on a life of their own under the flicker of fluorescent tubes. The hallways, lined with unbreakable plexiglass mirrors at every turn, were meant to feel claustrophobic. Yet extras complained that they kept glimpsing their own reflections out of the corner of their eyes, an unsettling echo of the smile's power. One night, a late-shoot security guard claimed he saw a mirror's surface ripple like water when no breeze stirred. The footage was erased for safety, and perhaps sanity, but the rumor-fueled on-set whispers that the curse itself had slipped through the cracks of fiction. Costume designer Elena Ruiz faced her own fiendish challenge, creating Nurse Ramirez's uniform so pristine it became a visual anchor amid the hospital's mounting dread. She sourced hundreds of polyester blends from medical suppliers, then sent them through a special wash that stiffened the fabric into near-impenetrable armor. Yet during one chase scene through the lobby, Lovey Ramirez's character slipped on the stiff hem of her skirt, sending her tumbling into a bank of fluorescent tubes. Cameras kept rolling, and captured Ramirez's genuine yelp and the spectacular crash. That unplanned pratfall, later echoed in trailers, became a fan-favorite moment, proof that sometimes the body's betrayal can heighten on-screen terror and dark humor alike. Sound mixer Tyler Chen harnessed the hospital's ambient noise, ventilation hums, distant patient murmurs, the echo of nurses' carts, to build a soundscape that felt alive, even malevolent. For the infamous echo chamber sequence, he rigged contact mics to the frosted acrylic walls, capturing every footstep as a bone-deep thump. But on the day of the first test, the mics picked up an otherworldly whisper, a soft, swirling laugh that no actor had voiced. Frantic playback revealed nothing on set that matched the sound. Chen looped it under the final cut, titling it The Smile's Signature Breath, and it remains one of the film's most chilling auditory motifs. She reads of a nurse in 1978, her grin fixed after a glimpse in a ward mirror, and of a porter in 1950, discovered dead with his own reflection fractured across a shattered window. Each report is a thread woven through time, binding disparate victims to a single malevolent force. Evelyn sketches a map of these tragedies, plotting each mirror's location like a grim constellation. She tracks a lead to an aging historian named Marjorie Clark, holed up in a dusty seaside cottage. Marjorie, silver-haired and frail, greets her by the hearth's firelight dancing across lines of sorrow etched into her face. She offers a trembling hand to Evelyn's recorder, recounting whispered legends of a grinning specter that once haunted coastal cliffs. "It began with enforced cheer," Marjorie croaks, recalling a carnival mirror house that tormented souls until one heir of the land collapsed beneath its own laughter. From the wreckage, survivors spoke of a grin that slipped from glass to flesh. Evelyn listens, mind racing with connections she cannot ignore. Back at the hospital, the corridors darken with the coming storm. Lights flicker in the ER, and the intercom static seems to carry soft, discordant laughter. Evelyn convenes a team: Detective Marcus Lane, drawn by records of unexplained deaths, Dr. Priya Singh, expert in mass psychosis, and Chief Nurse Ramirez, whose unwavering calm steadies frightened staff. Together, they review hospital blueprints, marking every reflective surface, ward windows, polished rails, even the chrome handles on the supply lockers. Each becomes a potential gateway for the Smile, a threat hidden in plain sight. Their first attempt at intervention is desperate and improvisational. A patient is scheduled for mirror therapy in a specially rigged room, mirrors draped in sheer cloth that diffuses every reflection. As the cloth slips, the patient's grin warps, the expression snagging on her features before she collapses. Evelyn and Marcus watch helplessly as the Smile imprints itself on her empty eyes. They dart forward, pulling the cloth taut, but the damage is done. The walls seem to pulse with satisfaction, as though the very act of hiding reflections sparks deeper hunger. They scramble out of the room, hearts pounding. Determined to learn more, Evelyn visits Gabriel, a traumatized survivor of the original outbreak now confined to a rural halfway house. He greets her with wide eyes, clutching a sketchbook stained with charcoal. Evelyn flips through portraits of twisted smiles, some broad as canyon walls, others thin as razor blades. Gabriel mumbles about becoming one of us if seen too long. Evelyn records his every word, then flees as he lunges for her jacket, breath hot and desperate. Outside, raindrops spatter her face, as though the sky itself mourns the Smile's persistent return. That night, Evelyn walks the corridors alone, flashlight in hand. She tracks the static-laced laughter through the ICU, where ventilators hiss in rhythmic chaos. She pauses by a nursery's glass window, tiny strollers lined up like a row of empty cradles. Her reflection joins theirs for a fleeting moment, then her own lips flick in the rear of her eyes. She stumbles back, heart hammering, and the hallway lights flicker out. In the pitch, she hears the laughter crescendo, a swarm of voices promising to drag her mind into their carnival of madness. She races for the exit as the lights banish the shadows in spasms. Grim dawn finds her in the archives again. She discovers a blueprint of the old solarium, the same room Marjorie mentioned, a place designed to banish reflection with frosted glass and whitewashed walls. It is a crucible where no mirror can survive, a last refuge from the Smile's gaze. Evelyn rallies her allies and they commandeer the physical therapy gym, reconstructing the solarium's circular chamber with frosted acrylic walls, opaque windows, and a central ring of UV lamps. They work through the night, attaching storm lamps that flicker in coded pulses, each flicker calibrated to disrupt spectral energy. As the sun peaks over the horizon, Evelyn stands before the incomplete chamber, dust speckles floating in the floodlights. Inside, they have placed every hospital mirror, cracked, warped, abandoned, each one sealed behind frosted panels. They await the Smile's summons, breath held in collective tension. Evelyn's voice cracks as she recites the ancient incantation she found in Marjorie's diary, words of release, of sorrow for those ensnared by forced joy. The hospital around them holds its breath, and in that pregnant hush, the Smile emerges, a white distortion at the chamber's edge, grin widening in slow motion. Her team rallies. Marcus slams the heavy door shut, and Priya floods the chamber with UV light in a blinding fracture. The walls hum with energy, frost cracking in microfractures as the Smile recoils from its own reflectionless prison. Evelyn steps forward, her heart pounding with both fear and purpose. She speaks the final lines of the ritual, voice echoing in the sealed cylinder. The UV lamps intensify until the Smile shatters into motes of light, dissolving like mist under the sun's first rays. Silence floods the corridors once more. As they emerge from the gym, the hospital seems to exhale. Nurses return to their posts, monitors stabilize, and patients wake from their haze. Evelyn feels trembling lift from her limbs. Yet in every window she passes, the receptionist's mirrored desk, the chrome handles in the supply closet, she sees only her true reflection, untainted by terror. Hope glimmers in her own soft smile, but in the periphery of her vision, she catches a faint shimmer, a promise that the fight, this first half of a larger battle, is far from over. Evelyn Drake arrived at the county hospital weighed down by memories she could barely confess to herself. In her first frames, she moves like someone learning to inhabit a new skin, each step measured against the antiseptic chill of fluorescent-lit halls. Her eyes, bright with intelligence, flicker with shadows of past failures, cases she couldn't save, faces she couldn't comfort. Yet beneath that tremor lies steel, a clinician who has stared into the abyss and refused to bow. She carries a small leather-bound journal wherever she goes, its pages a map of each patient's whispered terrors. When she confronts the Smile's first victim, kneeling at a collapsed nurse's side, compassion steals into resolve. Every decision she makes, piecing together old asylum blueprints, defying hospital protocol to build a solarium trap, springs from a determination that brilliance alone cannot explain. Evelyn's strength lies in her vulnerability. She bears the weight of every shattered mind she cannot mend, yet continues to wade into darkness, guided by a belief that empathy can outshine even the cruelest grin. Others countered that the sequence's brutality was essential. The Smile feeds on our own reflections, and to sanitize its violence would rob the film of its thematic power. In The Hollywood Reporter, a defense argued that the scene's horror was a necessary catalyst, making the audience viscerally aware that the curse is not a distant legend but a present danger lurking in every polished surface. Gabriel's charcoal sketches became another focal point of critical debate. The decision to give the mute survivor an entirely visual language, his art speaking where words failed, resonated deeply with many critics, who saw it as a homage to silent-era expressionism. In Cineast, a long-form essay traced Gabriel's drawings back to German expressionist influences, noting how the distorted grins evoke Munch's The Scream and early horror comics. This visual lineage, critics argued, lent the Smile an art-historical legitimacy, elevating it beyond the realm of throwaway jump scares into a cultural archetype of human dread. The film's midpoint revelation, that the original asylum solarium was built to starve the curse of reflection, sparked another wave of analysis. Many reviews singled out the structural ingenuity, a circular chamber of frosted glass and filtered light, its design simultaneously functional and symbolic. Scholars pointed to the solarium as the narrative's philosophical core. It is a space that denies our most fundamental right, to see ourselves, and in doing so, offers temporary sanctuary from self-inflicted horrors. In academic panels, speakers noted that the solarium's geometry, no corners to hide in, no mirrors to betray, embodies the film's argument that only deliberate self-abnegation can break cycles of violence born from fear. When Evelyn, Marcus, and Priya sealed the smile in that chamber, the climactic tension reached a fever pitch. Critics praised the sequence's balanced construction, practical effects, minimal CGI, and a score that switched from pulsing electronics to a single sustained cello note as the panels slid shut. In Variety, one reviewer wrote that the final seconds, Evelyn's whispered incantation followed by the generator's dying hum, provided the perfect interplay of ritual and modern machinery, underscoring the film's theme that ancient curses and institutional structures are two sides of the same coin. Yet it was the denouement that cemented the film's emotional resonance. In the final shot, Evelyn catching her own smile in a hallway window and hesitating before it, the story refused tidy closure. Critics lauded this choice, arguing that it honored the smile's core terror, the idea that our own faces can betray us. Some called it a masterstroke of ambiguity, leaving open the possibility that the curse might return. In fan forums, this moment ignited intense debate. Was Evelyn's hesitation the first crack in her resolve, or a gesture of defiance, reclaiming her own expression? Box office analysts noted that this blend of cerebral horror and emotional depth fueled the film's strong performance. A $25 million opening weekend on a $20 million budget signaled not just audience hunger for scares, but for stories that wrestle with the darker corners of the human psyche. Streaming platforms later reported that the solarium scenes and the final hallway shot were among the most replayed segments, evidence that viewers returned not for gore alone, but for the thematic questions that linger in the mirror. In the months following release, roundtable discussions on horror podcasts compared the smile curse to cultural anxieties about forced positivity and the violence of superficial cheer. Literary critics traced echoes of folklore, stories of the grim grin in 19th-century oral history, to the film's modern setting, suggesting that the smile is a living archetype as old as storytelling itself. Film schools added the movie to curriculums under contemporary horror and psychological trauma, praising its fusion of procedural investigation, visual expressionism, and deep character work. Ultimately, the film's most enduring impact lies in its ability to turn every reflective surface into a site of dread and contemplation. By weaving significant events, a nurse's collapse, the blueprint revelation, the solarium ritual, and infusing each with thematic weight, the story transcends pulp horror. It asks, what price do we pay for the grins we force, the masks we wear, and the images we betray? And it leaves us with the unsettling truth that the most dangerous mirror is the one we carry within. In the glow of its key scenes and the echo of its final grin, the film's legacy endures, a mirror to our own frailties, and a testament to horror's power to illuminate the darkest corners of the human heart. They arrived before dawn on a damp spring morning, the sky the dull gray of hospital walls, and found the soundstage on Atlanta's outskirts transformed into a replica of Harborview County Hospital. Electricians hunched beneath long fluorescent fixtures, grips wrestled lengths of cable into place, and carpenters tapped at freshly painted walls in institutional green. At the center of it all stood production designer Mark White, clipboard in hand, his eyes alight with the knowledge that this sterile shell would soon crack open with ancient terror. He had flown in sections of Seattle's real hospital windows, each pane specially treated to withstand on-set effects, only to discover the frames wouldn't fit the stage's steel posts. Rather than delay shooting, he and his crew spent all night remachining brackets in the studio's makeshift metal shop, using acetylene torches that sent sparks dancing across the concrete floor. By morning, the windows gleamed in place, and the first shot rolled on time, a nurse's wide-eyed reflection, captured in glass that had nearly become an impassable obstacle. Inside, costume designer Elena Ruiz wrestled with another puzzle, the hospital uniforms. She sourced bolts of wrinkle-resistant polyester that needed to look institutional yet allow actors to move freely through corridors and sudden action sequences. On the first fitting, actor Rachel Kim, cast as Chief Nurse Ramirez, slipped on a prototype scrub top only to find it so stiff she couldn't bend her arms. Ruiz and her team tore into the seams with sewing machines humming through the night, blending each poly blend with a hidden panel of stretched jersey beneath the arms. The next day, Kim tested the new design by sprinting down the lobby set, a test captured on camera and later used in a clever transition from scripted scene to behind-the-scenes featurette sound mixer. Tyler Chen co-opted an entire old boiler room beneath the studio to record the recurring heartbeat motif. He and his Foley artists set mics amid ancient pipes, coaxing low-frequency rumbles that would underpin the Smile's presence. When an actual boiler kick-started mid-take, rumbling through the floorboards like an underground tram, Chen froze the rolling cameras and motioned for a print sign. The real-life mechanical roar became the film's signature sub-bass hum, a practical effect born of coincidence and captured on the world's oldest sound recording hardware. Each transition hinges on a reflected surface, the sealed acrylic, the glass exit doors, tying resolution to reflection's exile. As the credits roll, the final pullback lingers on Evelyn's face in the solarium's opaque door, her genuine smile, unbroken, shining in the cool light. Behind her, every outline of the hospital aligns with gurneys and lights, a world reclaimed from mirror-born terror. Yet in the last frame, a single hallway mirror pulses with life, reminding us that reflection, once unleashed, can never be fully contained. In this world where glass holds truth and lies in equal measure, the settings themselves, hospital, asylum, cityscape, all stand as testaments to the fragile barrier between our own faces and the monsters our fears invite. And in each gleaming corridor and frost-white room, the Smile story unfolds anew, a cautionary tale etched in every reflective surface we trust. They arrived before dawn on a muggy Atlanta morning, the sky still a bruise of pre-sunlight, and found the backlit transformed into Harborview County Hospital's deserted wings. Trucks bearing crates stamped "set dressing" rumbled across cracked asphalt while grips stretched cables through doorways awaiting their fluorescent fixtures. Production designer Mark White, clipboard in hand, surveyed the shells of corridors that would soon host humanity's deepest fears. He had flown in authentic hospital windows from Seattle, each pane fortified against on-set pyrotechnics, only to discover they were an inch too tall. Plywood hacks and last-minute steel trims saved the day, making those glass walls the first challenge overcome in a shoot defined by unscripted surprises. Inside, costume designer Elena Ruiz faced her own battle. She'd sourced crisp, wrinkle-resistant polyester scrubs to outfit the hospital staff, but when lead actress Mara Thompson tried her first fitting, she found the uniform so stiff she could barely lift her arms. Undeterred, Ruiz and her team camped in the costume trailer overnight, sewing invisible jersey inserts beneath every arm seam. The next morning, Mara sprinted down the lobby corridor in a test take, so effortlessly that director Owen Campbell shouted, "That's the shot!" And the footage later featured in trailers, proof that costumes, like scares, sometimes require last-minute ingenuity. The infamous rain sequence arrived on schedule, until the rented deluge truck developed a massive leak. Rather than delay shooting, Campbell ordered action, and the crew rigged fire hoses behind the hospital facade to supplement the truck's faltering jets. The resulting fourth-take shot, with rain coursing through set walls and pooling around gurneys, became the film's signature opening. Extras recall the lights reflecting on ankle-deep puddles as they flopped waterproof scrubs overhead and laughed through the cold spray, each convulsive giggle echoing the absurd joy of creating fear. By midday, the hospital's ventilation system had its own audition for terror. During a quiet dialogue scene, the air ducts roared to life in a grinding cacophony. Sound mixer Tyler Chen seized the moment, capturing the mechanical howls and weaving them into the Smile's menacing hum. The crew joked that the system itself had been possessed by the curse. Chen later explained that the real-world terror of crawling into ductwork with a boom mic had lent authenticity no sound design, and no actor, could manufacture. Stunt coordinator Angela Rivers faced the hydraulic gimbal challenge with her trademark blend of precision and bravado. For the subway confession, she rigged a full-scale train car body on a motion platform. On the first rehearsal, the water cannons meant to simulate underground leaks burst too early, flooding the mock tracks and sending actors scrambling. Rather than scrap the take, Campbell shouted, "Cut!" Then, "Print!" capturing the panic and unintended stumbles as part of the final sequence. That real chaos now punctuates the scene with an edge no CGI could replicate. The chemistry between Mara Thompson, Dr. Drake, and Victor Reyes, Detective Lane, was aided by nightly jam sessions in the craft services tent. Guitar cases and makeshift drum kits appeared as grips tuned in from their day jobs. Mara, who had played piano in college, coaxed chord progressions on a borrowed keyboard, while Victor taught the crew a simple chorus of "Smile, Don't Fear." These impromptu concerts became both crew soundtrack and cast bonding ritual, the shared laughter blending with the film's darker overtones to remind everyone that community can thrive even under simulated siege. Makeup lead Lucia Kim pioneered a reactive effect for the cursed patient's grin. Instead of prosthetics, she concocted an ink that darkened with heat. Actors wore hidden heating pads beneath their jaws. As the cameras rolled and temperatures rose under the lights, the fissures at their mouth corners appeared to spread in real time. On the first test, the effect was too intense, white-hot lines creeping up a young actress's cheeks. Lucia dialed back the mix, achieving a tremulous crackle that glimmered under studio lights. That living effect heightened the realism of each scene, turning static paint into something that seemed truly alive. On location in actual Seattle for exteriors, the crew was blessed with sunshine so bright it threatened the film's rainy aesthetic. Undaunted, photographer Darius Wells rigged haze machines and shot from low angles, flooding the lens with backlight to simulate the city's trademark gray. Actors trudged through faux puddles while stand-ins held umbrellas overhead. In post, editors sprinkled digital rain and color-graded the footage to a stormier palette. That blend of on-location authenticity and studio wizardry imbued the cityscapes with a believable gloom that anchored the Smile's supernatural reach. Composer Asha Patel recorded portions of her score in an abandoned church outside Atlanta. During one late-night session, the organ pipes erupted in a spontaneous tremor when a passing thunderstorm triggered the building's ancient wiring. Rather than halt recording, Patel layered the organ's natural crackle beneath her cello main theme. The resulting track, haunting, raw, and electric, became the film's emotional core, its pulsing motif echoing the Smile's unsettled heartbeat. One of the oddest visitors to the set was a great horned owl that soared through an open bay door during a night shoot in the ICU corridor. Cameras rolled, capturing its silent wingspan as it alighted on a prop stretcher. The animal wrangler arrived minutes later, coaxing the bird to safety. But director Campbell insisted on keeping the footage, an unplanned cameo that, in the final edit, flashes only as a pale silhouette against flickering lights. Fans of the film delight in spotting Harvey, as the crew renamed him, an Easter egg that reminds viewers real-world surprises can outshine scripted scares. They arrived before dawn on the lot behind a rented warehouse, the air thick with Atlanta's lingering spring mist. In that hush, the skeletal frame of Harborview County Hospital stood half-built, corridors stretching into shadows, doors numbered in faded vinyl, and windows hung like gaping eyes awaiting their first patient. By the time the sun's pale fingers reached the set, the hospital had become its own character, clinical, antiseptic, yet humming with the promise of unseen horrors that would bloom beneath its fluorescent glare. Dr. Evelyn Drake first enters the world through that lobby's sliding glass doors, captured in a single unbroken Steadicam shot that drifts from the polished tile floor up to her face. The camera lingers on the ceiling's harsh panels, their rows of tubes flickering in patterns that echo the electrical hum of her own heartbeat. Every detail is deliberate, the pale green walls scuffed by gurneys, the reception desk's plastic brochures splayed like silent witnesses, the overhead monitors looping soothing nature scenes even as unseen dread coils in the frame's edges. Cinematographer Brian Bolt chose a cool color palette for these corridors, mint and steel, so that every drop of simulated rain pooling on the floor would gleam like a tear shed by the building itself. In the psychiatric wing, the corridors narrow, the walls weep condensation, and the lights hang lower, their bulbs diffused by yellowed plastic covers. Here, the Smile's first victims crumble, their grins carved into faces by some invisible force. The wide-angle lenses Bolt employed bend reality at the hallway's far end, making each turn feel both inviting and perilous. Soft focus at the edges of the frame suggests unreality, as though the very air pulses with a spectral presence. When a nurse staggers under the compulsion to grin, the scene unfolds in extended takes, the audience feeling every second of her resistance before her collapse transforms the corridor into a gallery of silent screams. Beyond those walls lies the abandoned asylum, its silhouette tattooed against a stormy sky on a second-unit shoot in northern Georgia. Ivy climbs fractured brick facades. Windows gape like missing teeth. Mark White's production design team redressed the real asylum's courtyards with period-accurate caged doors and rusted signage that once promised salvation but now warns of entrapment. Wide establishing shots, captured by drone at twilight, show the asylum's towers and bell gable, the broken steeple plunging into the gathering gloom. When Evelyn and Detective Marcus Lane slip past chain-link fencing to explore its bowels, the cinematography shifts to handheld frames, each footstep echoing like a confession as the camera tilts with every shaky breath. Inside the asylum's main block, the Smile's legend solidifies in the Solarium, a circular chamber once designed for sunlight therapy. For the trapping of the curse, the production team rebuilt the Solarium on Stage 7, walls of frosted acrylic rising like the shell of a giant pearl, diffusing light into a luminous cage where no mirror could reflect. Electricians strung rows of battens overhead, their tungsten bulbs filtered through powder-white gels, bathing the floor in sterile radiance. When Evelyn and her allies wheel in the cursed mirror shards, their movements cast elongated shadows that flicker against the matte walls, shadows that dance as though the prison itself inhales fear and exhales defiance. Music and sound design deepen the atmosphere, weaving into each setting like a hidden pulse. In the hospital lobby, Tyler Chen recorded the clatter of distant dish carts and the hiss of automatic doors, layering them beneath a soft whisper of wind chimes conjured from bowed percussion. At the asylum, sound mixer Olivia Jenkins captured the low rumble of wind through broken windows and the distant drip of rainwater seeping through ancient roofs. Composer Asha Patel's score threads a recurring motif, a chord that trembles on the edge between minor and diminished, so that every transition from hospital to asylum feels like a note untuned within the mind's own instrument. Seattle itself emerges as a landscape of both comfort and threat. Second-unit footage shows the Space Needle's slender spire reaching into fog, ferries gliding across a gray-burnished bay, and rain-lashed storefronts where neon signs crackle in puddles. These exteriors lace through the interior settings, a rhythmic reminder that the smile can flourish wherever reflections lie in wait. In one haunting cutaway, the camera lingers on a commuter's umbrella mirrored in a cafe window, only to dissolve into Evelyn's face framed in the hospital's glass panels, an uncanny echo that blurs city and set into a single realm of dread. Costume and makeup carry the story's weight in each location. Chief Nurse Ramirez's scrubs shift from crisp pinstripes in the lobby to a soggy shimmer under the Solarium's UV wash, her uniform becoming a second skin that records trauma like a quiet record. Makeup designer Lucia Kim developed the Smile's corner lip lesions with a thermally reactive ink, so that in the asylum's cold corridors the cracks remained ghostly white, while under the Solarium's warmth they bloomed into living veins of midnight ink. When actors change from daycare nurses to asylum survivors, their costumes ripple with each setting's emotional temperature, fabrics absorbing both horror and hope. Lighting choices follow an emotional arc as well. In Evelyn's home office, golden tungsten illuminates her desk at dawn, a haven of normalcy before she steps into the hospital's fluorescent purgatory. At night, the hospital transforms into a chiaroscuro cathedral, bare bulbs swinging overhead, strobe flashes in the emergency wing, and exit signs flickering like watchful eyes. In the asylum, only battery-powered lanterns light her way, the edges of shot frames surrendered to blackness. Inside the Solarium, the shift to unyielding white light casts every face in stark relief, revealing the truth in each wrinkle, tear, and determined glance. Mirrors serve as both doorways and weapons. In the hospital, every mirrored window and auto-door surface becomes a trap waiting to spring. Wide shots show Evelyn passing reflections that distort in the periphery, while close-ups dwell on a single pane of glass clouded by her own breath, the first hint that the smile has found her. At the asylum, shattered shards of mirror litter the floor, each fragment reflecting a sliver of terror until they are sealed away in the Solarium's freezer. Here the camera dips below frost lines to track imperfect reflections, a visual vocabulary that says, fear is not just in what we see, but in what we cannot unsee. Throughout, editorial rhythm dances between POV intimacy and wide-angled dread. Editor Bella Ferreira stitches together moments of still silence, Emily's trembling hand cradling a reflection, with rapid intercuts during mirror therapy sequences, where the smile strikes in split seconds. In the finale, cross-cutting between the solarium's closing doors and the first safe dawn in the lobby creates a crescendo of relief and lingering unease. The doors lock, lights pulse, and then fade to the morning shift clock-in. Each transition hinges on a reflected surface, the sealed acrylic, the glass exit doors, tying resolution to reflection's exile. As the credits roll, the final pullback lingers on Evelyn's face in the solarium's opaque door, her genuine smile, unbroken, shining in the cool light. On the first official night of rain sequences, the LA-based Deluge truck arrived from a rental house, but it leaked at every seam, sending unexpected jets through the set walls. Director Owen Campbell, undeterred, turned the mishap into art. He rewrote the scene so the cameras would capture spray through high windows, staccato bursts racing across hallways and bouncing off gurneys. The extra water that poured through the cracks lent the hospital lobby a slick patina of dread, the puddles catching emergency light in perfect reflections of looming faces. Makeup lead Lucia Kim faced her own monster in the form of the Smile's corner-mouth lesions. Rather than rely on prosthetics that would peel under hot stage lights, she created a reactive ink that darkened when actors spoke in heated takes. The formula required silver mica powders and a skin-safe fixer that Lucia synthesized in her tiny on-set lab. The effect was subtle at first, just a faint shadow at the lip's edge, but as the actor's performance intensified, the cracks deepened into living vines of corruption. On set, mid-scene, actors would glance at the mirror and break character with genuine alarm, a rawness that Lucia insisted be captured in camera. Stunt coordinator Angela Rivers orchestrated the most elaborate practical effect, the freestanding mirror's spectral apparition. She built a lightweight aluminum frame that could be dropped backward on cue, while a second mirror, angled off-camera, reflected a thin-cloaked stunt double emerging with a distorted grin. The first rehearsal saw the stunt double glued to a skid plate, slipping unexpectedly and sending both mirrors crashing. No one was hurt, but Campbell recognized gold. The unscripted crash made its way into the final cut, the broken shards glinting at just the right moment to fracture reality for Evelyn's character. Evenings on set became a festival of improvisation. Between takes, cast and crew gathered in the craft services tent, heaped with Korean-style rice bowls and cold lemonade, to trade lore of the Smile's fictional curse. Josephine Langford, who plays Dr. Drake, would lead impromptu storytelling circles, asking makeup artists and grips to recount the scariest reflection you've ever seen. One veteran prop master told of building a giant plexiglass dental mirror for a dentist scene in an old horror show, and catching in its reflection a figure that wasn't in the camera's frame. As the campfire-style tales grew more outlandish, the laughter echoed through the empty corridors, an antidote to the staged horror waiting just beyond. The film's second unit flight to actual Seattle proved equally full of surprises. The crew arrived to capture establishing shots of rain-beaten back alleys and ferry horns drowning in fog, only to find the city basked in unseasonable sunshine. Rather than simulate gloom with filters and haze machines, director of photography Brian Bolt embraced the contrast. Umbrellas popped open in bright light, and puddles reflected cerulean skies. When the footage was woven into the hospital scenes of fear tinted by glints of unexpected blue, it underscored the Smile's insidious ability to appear anywhere, even in the most unthreatening contexts. Composer Asha Patel recorded the main theme in an unused church auditorium outside Atlanta, its soaring ceilings lending a natural reverb that no studio could replicate. On a dark November night, the organ pipes exploded into life as a power storm knocked out the building's lights. Undaunted, Patel dimmed the console's glow and played her cello lines by lamplight, improvising dissonant swells that captured the Smile's creeping dread. That track, titled Phantom Grin, became the film's emotional backbone, a sonic fingerprint as recognizable as the film's opening heartbeat. One of the strangest on-set occurrences involved an uninvited avian guest, a venerable great horned owl that swooped through the open studio doors during a night shoot in the ICU set. Cameras rolled, capturing its silent wingspan before it alighted on a cabinet and surveyed the scene with jeweled eyes. The bird remained for a full take, witness, perhaps, to the simulated horrors, and then vanished as mysteriously as it arrived. Production designer White insisted on including a brief glimpse of the owl's silhouette in the scene's shadows, an eidolon of the smile watching unseen. As the COVID-19 pandemic began to cast its shadow, the crew adapted quickly. Extra hand-washing stations were erected in the courtyard sets, and trailers were retrofitted for socially distanced makeup. Hero Fiennes, star of the first Smile, volunteered for an early self-quarantine after a near-miss cold. His absence forced reshoots to be scheduled in tight windows, each tweaked line delivered outdoors in the courtyard beneath the cold air. Campbell later said those brisk dawn sessions lent the performances an edge of real vulnerability that no studio heat lamp could supply. When principal photography finally wrapped, the wrap party was held in that same warehouse, now stripped of hospital walls and echoing like an empty cathedral. Cast and crew dressed in black, exchanging stories of near misses and accidental art. Rachel Kim presented a scrap metal Smile Trap trophy crafted from broken mirror fragments. Sound mixer Chen distributed flash drives labeled Haunting FX, containing the boiler recordings that had sputtered onto the main soundtrack. Composer Patel passed around cassette tapes of her organ improvisations, each tape hand-numbered and sealed with a drop of resin shaped like a teardrop. Months later, the film's release ignited its own ripple of strange facts. Fans dissected the credits to spot the owl's cameo. In the font wiggle of the Bird Wrangler credit, there lay a tiny silhouette. Online forums mapped every accidental reflection cameo captured in background corners, and a Reddit thread cataloged each of the 12 times the production's rain truck burst a valve. In film schools, the movie's production designers presented at conferences on adaptive set building, using the Smiles Hospital as a blueprint for high-speed problem-solving under budget constraints. At conventions, panels on The Hidden Horror of Practical Effects showcase the Smiles hydraulic gimbal and exploding rainpipe, while cosplay groups craft replica Nurse Ramirez costumes with those signature reactive lesions. Merchandise even includes mini frosted acrylic solarium puzzles, a tactile tribute to the film's most ingenious trap. And somewhere in a forgotten corner of the studio's warehouse, the rain machine waits, hoses coiled, pressure gauges at zero, ready, perhaps, for its next downpour of cinematic dread. In every tale of jackhammering cameras in flooded lobbies, of owl-born cameos and organ improvisations by candlelight, the film's creation becomes its own ghost story. Each behind-the-scenes moment, from the disastrous first rain test to the on-the-fly costume overhaul, proves that real-world surprises, like a loose cable sparking a perfect flicker or a bird's silent wings cutting through staged horror, sometimes shape a horror film's true magic. And in that shimmering space between plan and accident, between reflected dread and crafted nightmare, the Smile found its most haunting home. They arrived before dawn on the lot behind a rented warehouse, the air thick with Atlanta's lingering spring mist. COVID-19 precautions crept in during the final weeks of production. Though the film wrapped before mask mandates, the crew voluntarily adopted social distancing in the makeup trailer and installed extra sanitizing stations around the set's buffet tables. Victor Reyes, ever the protector, organized nightly temperature checks and personally traced contacts, forging a care culture that foreshadowed the industry-wide safety protocols soon to follow. The sense of shared responsibility bolstered morale, even as the world beyond the set grew more uncertain. When principal photography finally concluded, the wrap party took place in the very courtyard drenched by the rain machine weeks before. Edison bulbs strung overhead cast warm halos on tables piled with pizza, some iced pink in homage to the Smile's teeth, and craft beer tapped from kegs labeled Smile's Last Laugh. Mara Thompson offered a heartfelt toast, quipping, "To every surprise burst pipe, every rogue HVAC howl, every runaway owl, may our next shoot be just as unhinged." Laughter cracked the night air, a tonic for months spent conjuring terror. Months later, fans continue to unearth behind-the-scenes lore, the rain truck's heroic second valve patched with duct tape, the great horned owl's fleeting silhouette in mid-shot, the metallic roar of hospital boilers woven into the score, and the karaoke-fueled camaraderie of cast and crew. Film schools study the Solarium build as a masterclass in rapid prototyping, and horror podcasts dissect Angela Rivers's hydraulic gimbal trick that made the cursed subway car lurch like a living thing. Collectors clamor for reproduction sets of Nurse Ramirez's stretch scrubs, now a cosplay staple, while pop-up exhibits recreate the hospital corridor with flickering lights and ambient sighs of unseen breath. Even as audiences scream at the smile's first glimpse, the real magic often lies behind the camera. In the avalanche of improvisation when a hose burst, in the hushed awe of an owl's nocturnal cameo, in the organ pipes that awakened a church long presumed silent. Through every challenge, mechanical, meteorological, or emotional, the cast and crew turned accidents into art, forging a film that pulses with the electric charge of real-world surprise. And in every puddled hallway and sterilized corridor, the heartbeat of their collective creativity resonates, a reminder that horror's power often springs from the unplanned moments when fiction and reality collide. They arrived before dawn in the abandoned wings of Harborview County Hospital, the halls hushed beneath the weight of unspoken dread. In that silence, the smile's true terror revealed itself, not in sudden shocks or blood-soaked gore, but in the slow unraveling of trust and the corrosion of the human spirit. From the first steps Dr. Evelyn Drake took through those hospital doors, the film wove a tapestry of themes: fear and empathy, reflection and self-confrontation, community and isolation, each thread deliberately mirrored in every corridor, every glass pane, every flicker of fluorescent light. At its heart lay the paradox of the smile itself, a grin meant to signal warmth and welcome, perverted into a weapon that shattered souls. This inversion speaks to the film's critique of forced positivity, how societal pressures to keep smiling can mask pain, ostracize the suffering, and demand performative joy that ultimately backfires. When the first nurse collapses, compelled to grin until her last breath, the film zeroes in on the violence of expectation. Her final expression, teeth bared in a rictus of agony, becomes a symbol of identity stripped to its rawest edges, a caution against equating appearance with well-being. Mirrors function throughout as both literal and metaphorical portals. Early scenes linger on reflective surfaces, glass doors, station monitors, even the polished floors, each capturing Evelyn's own anxious countenance before warping into the smile's grotesque echo. Critics have noted the deliberate echo of Narcissus's fate. By staring too long into the mirror, one risks being consumed. Evelyn's journey forces her to confront not only the smile's curse but her own reflection, her past traumas and unspoken regrets. Only by forging empathy with Gabriel, the mute survivor who sketches the smile's many faces, does she learn to see beyond her own reflection and into the shared humanity of her patients. The abandoned asylum Solarium stands as the film's architectural allegory. Built to bathe patients in harmless sunlight and disinfect their minds, it becomes the crucible that finally traps the smile. Its frosted walls deny reflection, symbolizing the renunciation of surface appearances in favor of inner truth. When Evelyn and her allies seal the cursed mirror fragments within its confines, they enact a collective act of self-negation. They sacrifice their own images in order to save others from exploitation by fear. The Solarium's circular design, no corners, no hidden mirrors, underscores the theme of transparency, an ideal opposed to the smile's shadowy manipulation. Interiors versus exteriors also convey deeper resonance. The hospital's fluorescent-lit corridors, pristine yet oppressive, signify institutional control and the promise of care tainted by unseen terrors. The real-world exteriors, the rain-drenched streets of Seattle, the wind-lashed facade of the asylum, anchor the supernatural threat within familiar urban landscapes. This interplay reminds viewers that horror seldom arrives from the exotic but emerges in the cracks of everyday life, whether in the reflective gleam of a coffee shop window or the clinical glare of an office lobby. Sound and music deepen these themes. Composer Asha Patel's five-note motif, recorded in reverse then played forward, embodies the smile's disorienting power, familiar yet askew, a melody that hints at hope before warping into dread. The motif recurs whenever reflections loom, tying auditory awareness to visual cues. Foley artist Tyler Chen's incorporation of hospital boiler rumbles and distant chimes into the smile's ambient hum suggests that the curse reverberates through institutional structures, thriving in the mechanical heartbeats of places meant to heal. Characters' arcs mirror these motifs. Detective Marcus Lane's transformation from skeptic to believer charts the necessity of opening one's mind to the irrational in order to confront true horror. Dr. Priya Singh's fusion of scientific rigor and compassionate ritual underscores the film's argument that healing demands both logic and empathy. Chief Nurse Ramirez's steadfast calm illuminates the power of collective care in the face of individual terror. And Gabriel's silent artistry becomes the linchpin. Through his drawings, the film asserts that trauma can be voiced without words, that art can transmute fear into understanding. Even minor details resonate symbolically. Rain, unleashed in the film's opening, serves as baptism. It cleanses the streets even as it heralds the Smile's arrival. The recurring motif of broken glass, shattered panes trapped in the solarium freezer, speaks to memory's fragility and the danger of reflection left untamed. The film's final image, Evelyn's genuine smile returning in a frost-white corridor, suggests that hope persists where fear once reigned, though the faintest flicker of mirrored menace lingers, an acknowledgement that scars endure even after victory. In weaving these themes, forced joy versus authentic empathy, reflection versus self-confrontation. The film's final image, Evelyn's genuine smile returning in a frost-white corridor, suggests that hope persists where fear once reigned, though the faintest flicker of mirrored menace lingers, an acknowledgement that scars endure even after victory. In weaving these themes, forced joy versus authentic empathy, reflection versus self-confrontation, institutional care versus personal courage, the film transforms the Smile from a simple jump-scare device into a mordant allegory for the masks we wear. It reminds us that every smile we meet may conceal pain, every reflection a choice between avoidance and understanding. And in that final dissolved echo of the Smile's uncanny grin, we grasp its deepest lesson. Horror need not terrify us if we choose to face our own reflections and extend compassion to those who tremble before the mirror. They arrived at the soundstage just as the Georgia dawn gave way to a pale, steely sky, and found the skeletal frames of Harborview County Hospital alive with the hum of generators and the clatter of cable. In those first moments, before a single actor appeared, the filmmakers set the stage for an atmosphere of quiet dread. Cinematographer Brian Bolt wheeled in his Aricam LT, loaded with 35mm Kodak Vision 3250D film stock for key emotional beats, and paired it with a Sony Ari Alexa on low-light corridors, giving the hospital a texture both tactile and uncanny. His crew rigged diffuse LED panels behind hospital windows to simulate Seattle's gray light, carefully dimmed to 50% so that each corridor glowed with an otherworldly mid-tone. Their motto became, "No mirror bears the same gleam twice." From the opening sequence, director Owen Campbell insisted on long takes to build tension. When Evelyn first steps into the lobby, the camera arcs from floor to face in a single Steadicam shot, capturing every fissure in tile and steel reflection behind her. These uninterrupted shots invited the audience to accompany her breath by breath, heightening identification and dread as the Smile's first victim collapses in the distance. In early cuts, Campbell found that rapid edits undercut suspense. He restored each shot's original length, trusting the actors' performances and the set's claustrophobic geometry to carry the fear. Lighting designer Carlos Sanchez favored practical fixtures over theatrical spotlights. In the psychiatric wing, he concealed daylight-balanced fluorescents behind false panels, their hum audible in every take, lending the hospital's heart a mechanical life. For the Smile's first mirror therapy scene, he orchestrated a flicker effect by rigging random dimming circuits, short bursts of darkness that interrupted mid-dialogue, each plunge into shadow catching both characters and audience off guard. That strobe-like irregularity became the film's signature heartbeat, a pinging terror that suggested something alive behind each panel. Sound mixer Tyler Chen and Foley artist Marcus Nguyen built the Smile's auditory presence from the hospital's own machinery. Chen planted contact mics on gurney wheels and ventilation ducts, capturing metallic rumbles that Nguyen then manipulated into low-frequency rumbles underscoring each approach of the entity. In the ICU, the beeps of vital signs morphed into dissonant chimes at the first sign of the Smile, as though the hospital itself warned of the horror to come. Re-recording mixer Richard King assembled these elements in Dolby Atmos, placing idle wheel squeaks in the surround channels so that audiences felt the Smile prowling behind them in the dark. Stunt coordinator Angela Rivers engineered one of the film's most visceral practical effects, the hydraulic-powered subway car. Rather than relying on CGI, she and her team mounted the car body on a multi-axis gimbal, programming sudden tilts and jolts that mirrored Evelyn's terror as she confronts the Smile in the detained train. On the first rehearsal, the car flooded with industrial rain simulators, and when the hydraulic arm misfired, actors stumbled in genuine surprise. Campbell, ever the opportunist, kept that take. Its unscripted stumbles lent an authenticity that no digital rig could match. Makeup designer Lucia Kim devised the Smile's signature corner-mouth lesions with a heat-activated ink. Dabbing the edges of actors' lips with a silver mica compound, she used hidden warming pads beneath chin straps so that during heated takes, the cracks darkened in real time. On-set monitors displayed the effect live, and actors learned to feed their own adrenaline into the performance. The deeper the emotional sting, the wider the lesions would bloom. That living effect recalled the unpredictability of madness itself. Editor Bella Ferreira shaped these raw materials into a pulse-driven narrative. She alternated slow, lingering shots in the hospital's silent wings with rapid crosscuts during the Smile's breakthroughs, each transition timed to Patel's score. Composer Asha Patel recorded at an abandoned church, layering bowed piano with subterranean organ drones. She crafted a 5-note motif, first recorded in reverse to unsettle the ear, which Ferreira wove through key scenes, each recurrence a jolt of recognition that tied disparate moments into a single, thumping heart. The marketing and box office campaign mirrored the film's themes. Paramount's Find Your Reflection teaser invited viewers to stare into their own phone's front cameras, only to reveal a flash of the Smile's grin before cutting to black, a viral stunt that racked up millions of shares in 48 hours. The official trailer emphasized long takes and practical effects, promising not cheap CGI scares but a fear you can't look away from. On opening weekend, the film grossed $25 million domestically on a $20 million budget, an impressive feat for an original horror property in the spring season. Internationally, it added another $40 million, fueled by midnight screenings in Tokyo and themed mirror maze pop-ups in London's West End. Critics and audiences alike praised the film's commitment to tangible terror. Reviews highlighted the solarium sequence, an airtight chamber of frosted acrylic and purified UV light, as the film's crowning achievement, a space where the Smile could no longer reflect itself and thus lost its power. In fan forums, the practical rain machine mishap and the hydraulic subway car collapse became legend, inspiring DIY cosplayers to recreate those effects on green screen platforms. Through every shot, from the humming fluorescence to the tactile rain-slicked floors, from the groaning hydraulics to the living lesions at the lips, the filmmakers wove a story of fear rooted in the everyday. And as ticket sales climbed and audiences left theaters glancing nervously at every reflective surface, one truth shone through. True horror, like the Smile, is not born in pixels or cheap shocks, but in the unsettling interplay of light, sound, and the fragile reflections of our own faces. They arrived at the soundstage just as the Georgia dawn gave way to a pale, steely sky, and found the skeletal frames of Harborview County Hospital alive with the hum of generators and the clatter of cable. In those first moments, before a single actor appeared, the filmmakers set the stage for an atmosphere of quiet dread. Cinematographer Brian Bolt wheeled in his Aricam LT, loaded with 35mm Kodak Vision 3250D film stock for key emotional beats. In those first moments, before a single actor appeared, the filmmakers set the stage for an atmosphere of quiet dread. Cinematographer Brian Bolt wheeled in his Aricam LT, loaded with 35mm Kodak Vision 3250D film stock for key emotional beats, and paired it with a Sony Arri Alexa on low-light corridors, giving the hospital a texture both tactile and uncanny. His crew rigged diffuse LED panels behind hospital windows to simulate Seattle's gray light, carefully dimmed to 50% so that each corridor glowed with an otherworldly mid-tone. Their motto became, "No mirror bears the same gleam twice." From the opening sequence, director Owen Campbell insisted on long takes to build tension. When Evelyn first steps into the lobby, the camera arcs from floor to face in a single Steadicam shot, capturing every fissure in tile and steel reflection behind her. These uninterrupted shots invited the audience to accompany her breath by breath, heightening identification and dread as the Smile's first victim collapses in the distance. In early cuts, Campbell found that rapid edits undercut suspense. He restored each shot's original length, trusting the actors' performances and the set's claustrophobic geometry to carry the fear. Lighting designer Carlos Sanchez favored practical fixtures over theatrical spotlights. In the psychiatric wing, he concealed daylight-balanced fluorescence behind false panels, their hum audible in every take, lending the hospital's heart a mechanical life. For the Smile's first mirror therapy scene, he orchestrated a flicker effect by rigging random dimming circuits, short bursts of darkness that interrupted mid-dialogue, each plunge into shadow catching both characters and audience off guard. That strobe-like irregularity became the film's signature heartbeat, a pinging terror that suggested something alive behind each panel. Sound mixer Tyler Chen and Foley artist Marcus Nguyen built the Smile's auditory presence from the hospital's own machinery. Chen planted contact mics on gurney wheels and ventilation ducts, capturing metallic rumbles that Nguyen then manipulated into low-frequency rumbles underscoring each approach of the entity. In the ICU, the beeps of vital signs morphed into dissonant chimes at the first sign of the Smile, as though the hospital itself warned of the horror to come. Re-recording mixer Richard King assembled these elements in Dolby Atmos, placing idle wheel squeaks in the surround channels so that audiences felt the Smile prowling behind them in the dark. Stunt coordinator Angela Rivers engineered one of the film's most visceral practical effects, the hydraulic-powered subway car. Rather than relying on CGI, she and her team mounted the car body on a multi-axis gimbal, programming sudden tilts and jolts that mirrored Evelyn's terror as she confronts the Smile in the detained train. On the first rehearsal, the car flooded with industrial rain simulators, and when the hydraulic arm misfired, actors stumbled in genuine surprise. Campbell, ever the opportunist, kept that take. Its unscripted stumbles lent an authenticity that no digital rig could match. Makeup designer Lucia Kim devised the Smile's signature corner-mouth lesions with a heat-activated ink. Dabbing the edges of actors' lips with a silver mica compound, she used hidden warming pads beneath chin straps so that during heated takes, the cracks darkened in real time. On-set monitors displayed the effect live, and actors learned to feed their own adrenaline into the performance. The deeper the emotional sting, the wider the lesions would bloom. That living effect recalled the unpredictability of madness itself. Editor Bella Ferreira shaped these raw materials into a pulse-driven narrative. She alternated slow, lingering shots in the hospital's silent wings with rapid crosscuts during the Smile's breakthroughs, each transition timed to Patel's score. Composer Asha Patel recorded at an abandoned church, layering bowed piano with subterranean organ drones. She crafted a 5-note motif, first recorded in reverse to unsettle the ear, which Ferreira wove through key scenes, each recurrence a jolt of recognition that tied disparate moments into a single, thumping heart. The marketing and box office campaign mirrored the film's themes. Paramount's Find Your Reflection teaser invited viewers to stare into their own phone's front cameras, only to reveal a flash of the Smile's grin before cutting to black, a viral stunt that racked up millions of shares in 48 hours. The official trailer emphasized long takes and practical effects, promising not cheap CGI scares but a fear you can't look away from. On opening weekend, the film grossed $25 million domestically on a $20 million budget, an impressive feat for an original horror property in the spring season. Internationally, it added another $40 million, fueled by midnight screenings in Tokyo and themed mirror maze pop-ups in London's West End. Critics and audiences alike praised the film's commitment to tangible terror. Reviews highlighted the solarium sequence, an airtight chamber of frosted acrylic and purified UV light, as the film's crowning achievement, a space where the Smile could no longer reflect itself and thus lost its power. In fan forums, the practical rain machine mishap and the hydraulic subway car collapse became legend, inspiring DIY cosplayers to recreate those effects on green screen platforms. Through every shot, from the humming fluorescence to the tactile rain-slicked floors, from the groaning hydraulics to the living lesions at the lips, the filmmakers wove a story of fear rooted in the everyday. And as ticket sales climbed and audiences left theaters glancing nervously at every reflective surface, one truth shone through. True horror, like the Smile, is not born in pixels or cheap shocks, but in the unsettling interplay of light, sound, and the fragile reflections of our own faces. They gathered beneath the marquee after weeks of rain-drenched shoots and late-night reshoots, the air still electric with anticipation. Josephine Langford and Hero Fiennes Tiffin stepped onto the red carpet first, their faces alight with nervous excitement. Flashbulbs popped like distant thunder as they posed for photographs before slipping through the crowd and into the cavernous theater. The lobby was alive with chatter. Fans in pastel cardigans mirrored Tessa's signature look, while others clutched handmade "Smile Again" posters. In every cluster, whispers swirled. Did you see the subway scene? Wait till the Solarium Trap. I heard they used real owl calls.